the underlying data structures beneath SAP's ERP systems. And by 2018, we already started embedding intelligence and machine learning into the products. And that brings us all the way to today. And I can see that there's still a lot of work being done on process automation in 2019 and some of these planned innovations. Please, we always do state at the bottom there that this is a planned state and can be changed at any time. But I think what I'm very excited to see is that it's not going to be long before I'll be able to talk to a store, walk around with my phone and see augmented reality about all your promotions, and even be guided to the exact shelf and rack where I can find the item that I'm looking for. That sounds like exciting stuff. And within the next 18 months, can you believe it, SAP will be 50 years old. I hope I get invited to the party. So what I was trying to explain and show and just set into context there is that we have a very broad and very deep solution set, and this maps onto SAP's intelligent enterprise story. There's been a lot of innovation and product development over the last 23 years. But our focus today is on our new digital access licensing. And this is applicable only in the digital core. So in all of this reference architecture here around operations, intelligence, and experience, on the bottom left in the mustard yellowy color, this is where the stuff of digital access is relevant. This is in the core ERP areas of finance, sales and service, manufacturing, your procure to pay, your order to cash processes, and your logistics, supply chain execution. All of the other elements in this reference architecture have their own licensing models, and the focus of SAP's digital access licensing, as I said, is really in here. Right, so that was very ancient history, come a long way. Now let's look at more recently. We have probably in the last three and a half years, a tremendous amount of things have happened. And I think first and foremost, the beginning of 2017, internally at SAP, we launched something called Project Trust. And I think if you stop for a minute and think carefully about it, when things are about trust, they're actually quite serious. And to understand exactly why SAP was concerned and taking a lot of interest and effort and attention being paid on trust was right at the end of 2016, November, December 2016, SAP ended up in a very uncomfortable situation, having a difference of opinion, a misalignment with one of our favorite referenceable customers. And in the end, when we couldn't find common ground, we actually had to approach Mrs. Justice O'Farrell in the Royal Courts of London and ask that we please get some arbitration and some help between SAP and Diageo in the UK to help clarify a licensing compliance issue where we just couldn't seem to find common ground. So what had happened here is that Diageo had decided to use Salesforce.com for their CRM, and they had developed 2 custom applications for their Salesforce and as a direct channel for their customers. But with Diageo being an SAP ERP customer, what they did was they integrated those applications that they built through SAP NetWeaver process integration, connecting into SAP so that when their customers or their sales teams were out in the field or looking to buy something, they could check on availability of items, they could do pricing checks, credit checks, etc., and they could then execute and create sales orders, which was happening in the back end. So during the license measurement process and the interview process, when SAP sat with the folks at Diageo and interviewed them and asked them to please walk us through their order to cash process, this came out and seemed clear, and SAP staff basically said, but you're using the ERP software, so we need to just check that all of these user communities, your sales teams and your customers, are adequately licensed to use SAP ERP. And this is exactly where the issue came about. And Diageo put in the claim that they had understood and they believed that SAP NetWeaver process integration acted as some kind of a gateway, and a gateway license, in fact, that anybody on the other side of it, outside of the SAP landscape, did not need to be licensed as a named user. So this was, as I said, a dispute. This was a disagreement. It was unfortunately a very costly disagreement. There was a lot of digits in the values being discussed, but in the end, the outcome by the arbitration was that the finding was that only named users are authorized to use ERP directly or indirectly, and that named user pricing was the only basis ERP software was or is licensed to Diageo. So this was not a nice situation to be in. I think it clarifies that not only SAP NetWeaver process integration was misunderstood here, but any middleware, whether it was a message broker or an EDI model being followed, would not cover the same license requirement. So this was not a nice place to be. And I think to make matters worse, just in the early months of 2017, another one of SAP's very large, very much loved and referenceable customers, AB InBev, went through their financial year end and they submitted their annual report into the SEC in the United States. And deep down in that report, page 57, 58, they actually made provision and warned their shareholders that there was an arbitration with SAP underway. And they decided to state there that they were setting aside to cater for damages potentially in excess of 600 million US dollars. And you can see in the text there that based on allegations that employees were using SAP systems and data directly and indirectly without appropriate licenses. So I think at this point in time, everybody in the SAP community, our customers, SAP employees, our partners, everybody sat up and took notice that something was brewing here that was really not nice to see. And that is what was behind the decision by SAP to launch this Project Trust. And we definitely undertook to think about how we could modernize our licensing. It became clearer and clearer to us that the world is changing, the technology landscape is changing, more and more cross-platform integration is happening. We need to do something about it. We also need to perhaps do a better job of explaining ourselves and our use rights and our licensing terms. And one of the first things we did was boil it down to a single definition of use, as I showed in that previous slide. And also then to clarify, in a number of our contracts and license terms, we used the word directly and indirectly to make it a much more clearer statement that in terms of SAP ERP or S/4HANA, as you can see in this diagram, we now clarified there are 3 types of access that we recognize. On the left in the purple is, I think, the same license model that's been around ever since the Dark Ages. Anybody who is using the digital core directly from a terminal with a login and a session needs a named user license. Then we clarified at the bottom in blue that any SAP application that integrates with the digital core does not need a named user license, but it's a specific access type. What I like to do is use these small circles around the digital core, these little white dots, just to explain that not only our cloud solutions like Ariba and SuccessFactors constitute application access, but so too do all of our line of business and industry solutions and engines that are running much closer to the core. So any access by those products, for example, in extended warehouse management, if it triggers a material document in the core, that is considered SAP application access. And then in the green, we also then needed to clarify. You can see the gray cloud was hanging over third-party CRM there, but not only that, there were also third-party applications. There were people already starting to use and connect IoT devices directly into the core, creating service requests. And a hot topic of the day is also robotic process automation, or bots, and more concern around how this constituted use and what licensing was required. Something SAP also needed to focus on was to do a better job of communicating these things. And in that box on the left there, you see we did have a product that could have met the licensing needs of Diageo in that scenario, called sales and service order execution, or another one called purchase order execution, which is very much brought to market, put on our price list to cater for scenarios like that, where you have external users like your suppliers entering into your digital core and creating records in there, transacting. And we also came out with documentation to clarify exactly what is meant by static read, which is the ability for customers to take data out of their ERP systems to be consumed by people directly or in further third-party systems, non-SAP systems. And so long as it's not a kind of circular transaction where data is extracted and the person consuming it then does something which causes an inbound transaction back into ERP, then we don't have a licensing requirement for that. But obviously, SAP took this very seriously. If our customers are not happy, we are not happy. We needed to do something about this. So by 2018, we had three fundamental outcomes of this project. First, SAP combined all of its license, audit, and compliance functions. There were various teams, shared service centers doing the annual license evaluations from the data that our customers submit to us. We have the Office of License Compliance, the people who would actually go out onto site and do more fine-grained audits. We had the software engineering team who build the measurement logic and the measurement tools and things inside our products. And we have people like myself who are facilitators of all these processes and single point of contact for you, helping to clarify use rights, helping to check that there is compliance with contracts, and especially more complicated things like going through mergers and acquisitions and license transfers, divestments, things like that. The second major outcome was a change in the policies internal to SAP and a clear separation between our sales and our audit functions. So the GLAC organization was moved under the office of the COO, completely separated out from the global customer operations, which include sales. And the policies were also clear that our sales force, when they're talking to you, our customers, they need to make it clear what this thing about indirect use is all about. They need to make it clear that it's a risk and it's something that our customers need to be aware of, especially when they're purchasing new software and making changes to their existing models and landscapes and architectures. And also that they should just clarify that the license measurement or the audit process is now completely separate inside SAP. The GLAC organization does the planning, they do the customer nominations and selections and the timing. And it's not something that the salespeople have any influence over any longer. This was something also based on feedback from user groups around the world, that the audit function within SAP was not being used entirely correctly, and in some cases was being seen as a bit of a sales weapon or tool that was not very well appreciated by customers. And the third outcome is this digital access license model. What we realized is that, as I said, the world's changing. A lot more integration is happening. SAP's been tremendously successful in ERP, and many people out there are running SAP in the digital core. But as you saw in that reference architecture earlier, there is now a massive amount of innovation and functionality and tools and offerings out there that integrate with it. And yet, over all those years, SAP has changed very little in the way that its digital core is licensed, primarily named user based. And many of our customers were now in situations similar to what we had encountered with Diageo, where it was just no longer really easy to keep track of users and their licensing requirements for user communities external to SAP, and accessing it indirectly in many cases deep down in integration layers that were really no longer very visible and clear in many cases. So the thinking was that we needed to find a different way to handle indirect use or digital access, and the clever engineers and brains inside SAP came up with the concept of an outcome-based document license. So essentially bring the license requirement internal to the digital core, that you no longer needed to identify and keep track of users out there, but that from within the system, there was a way to actually identify and measure and track indirect access. So fundamentally, the direct human access stays the same. The named user requirement, or in S4HANA, the S4HANA users for enterprise management only. At the SAP application level, so long as these applications are adequately licensed, no further licensing requirement in the digital core is needed for any of those integrations. And on the right-hand side, we now can offer our customers a choice of either staying with the named user licensing model as it has always been, or to choose this new document-based licensing model. What we were unable to do, I don't see it changing in the future, is actually accommodate a mixed scenario where some of the access coming in indirectly should be considered licensed because there are named user licenses somewhere in the license estate, and in other cases, the documents should be counted. So at present, we have these 9 document types in the digital core. As I said in that reference architecture, this is really in your primary processes: order to cash, procure to pay, in logistics, quality and time management. That creation of items within these document types, so we count them at line item level, would consume a document license, but on the understanding that journals, postings in financials, for example, and material documents with movements in the supply chain execution, the volumes are much higher, that there is a different factor in how we calculate those, that for every 5 items, it actually consumes 1 document license. At the bottom, you can see how the count is calculated, and specifically in blue there in bold, the calculation is based on the initial document created. So if we walk that through for a second, if an external user comes in from a non-SAP application indirectly, or if it's coming from a device like an IoT device or a bot, if they create one of these document types, that gets counted. But any subsequent access of that same object does not get counted and does not need any license type whatsoever. So anybody out there indirectly reading, updating, deleting any of these document types and their line items, they do not need any licensing. And just to point out as well, in this list of 9 document types, for example, master data is not included in there. So people indirectly reading, creating, updating master data would no longer need a named user license whatsoever. So there's a couple of key benefits to this new model. It obviously, as I said, eliminates the need to to identify all these users out there who could potentially be indirectly touching the ERP system in the back end. It's very much outcome focused, that it's these specific non-document types when they get created, and these are fundamental to core business processes like order to cash. These get counted, but there's no charge for anything other than these document types, and there's no charging or licensing required for anything outside of the creation of these document types. It is a lot easier to keep track of. And just to highlight the second point here, subsequent document types created as a result of the automatic processing of the original document created indirectly are not counted. So just to take a very simple walkthrough, if somebody indirectly creates a sales order in ERP, and then within ERP that sales order turns into an invoice and turns into some journal postings and turns into some material movement documents, none of those subsequent documents, while they're being created, get counted, and they don't consume any of your digital access document licenses. It's quite flexible. There's two materials that have been added to our price list, one for classic SAP or ECC and one for S/4HANA. And the one document type covers all the one document license covers all non-document types. So it's really interchangeable. It doesn't matter whether you're creating a sales order item or a time or quality management document, they all consume from the same bucket of document licenses. It is priced in tiers like most of our products. So I know for fact, I'm working with a number of you that are on this call in the retail industry specifically. There are very high volumes of documents. And so the more you need, the cheaper it gets. And fundamentally, this is just far easier to track and to measure and to check in real time at all times what the license entitlement looks like versus consumption. Right, so then we get to the status quo, what's going on today. I am going to borrow a little bit from 2019 because we launched in the beginning, or in April 2019, an incentive or an adoption program for 1 year. And this has actually now been extended. So it started in April 2019, but it will run through December 2021. And we also have a number of conversion and extension policies to customers move from one license model to the other, should they choose to do so. So the adoption program, as I said, extended now December 2021, is essentially a two-step process. The first step is to figure out how many of these digital access documents you might need. And there we offer you a choice. Either you can estimate how many you need, and we can assist you with that, or you can actually set your systems up to start using the technology that we will and are using to count these documents and let it run for a certain amount of time so that you can get an actual measurement and remove any of the guesswork or the risks of getting this wrong. The second step then, once you know how many you might need, is a financial incentive. And I can talk to this a little bit later, but essentially you can buy what you need plus some headroom for growth, or you can buy what you need at a 90% discount. And the two, I think if you do the math, there's slight differences in them, but your account exec will most certainly be very willing, I'm sure, to help you get the numbers clear on that. Then, as I said, we also have these programs. SAP is not bringing something new to market that we're just trying to sell everybody, but we really are looking, as I said, to resolve an issue, to help our customers gain clarity on our licensing model and offer our customers a choice. And not only that, but also to leverage past investments so that any named user licenses that were purchased to cover indirect use Any previous purchase of our sales and service order execution licenses, those can be converted into these new digital access documents with product level conversions or extension policies and the like. So just to go a little bit deeper into this measurability topic, option A, the estimation. It is a bit wordy here, but essentially what it's saying in the first bullet point is SAP has a tool that we offer, an estimation tool, and it is applied via note into your systems. And once it's in there, if you are interested in going through this process, SAP's GLAC organization has a team of experts who are ready and willing and able to help you get set up, help you execute this program, and then interpret the results, because it can be quite a complex process. And this is entirely optional. You're more than welcome to run these estimation tools on your own and make sense of them. I have spoken to some customers that are doing that and not finding it too challenging, but I think in many cases the landscapes are extremely complex and there are so many interfaces that I think any extra eyes on the issue only helps. This quick reference sheet, also very wordy, but if I can maybe just focus on the left, those icons there, the bold text, a couple of steps. You have to obviously identify what systems you're going to be estimating, which of the digital core processes are touching those systems. You need to ensure that this estimation tool is in the system, either through recent patching or applying this note directly. And then step 3 is, I think, where the rubber hits the road. This is where the real work happens. I think there's some people on this call who will attest to that. We are already busy with this process and actually identifying all of these external interfaces and all of the technical users that are in the underlying base, allowing these integrations to take place. Those have to be unpacked. And I think this is where SAP can help in walking through processes and also helping identify which of these document types and items are applicable. Get that clear and then execute the note, and you can see in the middle of the slide, but actually the next slide is a clearer picture. These are some of the criteria that you can control so that you can focus on just a particular one or subset of these document types. You can limit it to a certain period if you want to see volumes over Christmas, or you want to see a whole year, or just a quarter. You can also restrict it by which of the technical users you want to investigate. So with these controls, I think it should be pretty clear to isolate a single process or a process step that you clear is being executed indirectly. And on the right, you see the outcomes from the estimation tool. You'll get a very clear picture of exactly which items within these document types and the counts thereof are being created by these particular technical users. Back to the reference sheet on the right, those are the two notes, and when we distribute these slides, there'll be links to them, and the support and guidance that SAP offers is in a structured way. We call it the Digital Access Evaluation Service. It is something, there's a short form that we ask customers to fill in that you have to request from SAP. It's free of charge. And so obviously first come, first serve. We don't have a limitless supply of experts to help, but please do take us up on the offer. The teams are gaining in experience, and it just helps, I think, on both sides to ensure SAP definitely does not want you to end up being far over licensed or far under licensed a year or 2 or 3 down the line from here when these things are measured during your normal license measurement process. There's a couple of things to keep in mind at the bottom of the slide here, and this is why I think SAP can offer to help, is that, for example, if you have a technical team, a basis team who've been very meticulous and they've restricted the number of technical user accounts they've created and inadvertently created SAP to SAP integrations and non-SAP to SAP integrations with the same account, it's going to be a little bit trickier to separate out which need to be counted as indirect and which don't need to be counted because it's application access. Another point that we have encountered is in some cases that same technical user is used in a batch process after the fact and is actually then the creator of subsequent documents, and the measurement tools count those, in some cases incorrectly. So that would also be something where we could help with manual adjustments to make sure that the numbers as close to correct as possible. If any archiving is taken place, that can definitely skew results. And obviously, this only looks at historical system activity. Any current projects, current integrations, future planned integrations, even with non-SAP, should definitely be factored in and taken into account to get this estimate as correct as possible. Okay, the second option, where it's actually more of a measurement than it is an estimate, this makes use of something that has actually been inside SAP for many, many years, but primarily used by performance and basis and ABAP developers to trace across systems logical units of work. It's called the SAP Passport. If you look on help.sap.com, you'll see it's actually called the Extended Passport. And as it says there, it enables you to analyze call sequences within a distributed landscape. So this is what SAP actually uses to provide those STAD and STO3 trace screens and things where you can actually see how much time it took from the front end to get to the app server, how much time from the app server to get to the database, how much time from the database to actually query and get the results, etc. It breaks it all down. And it's essentially by putting into the header of these calls, either stateful or stateless calls, some context and some identifiers that basically track the same logical unit of work across the landscape. And this same technology is what will be counted, or what is being used for us to be able to identify indirect document creation. This is another wordy reference sheet, but I guess the crux is in the graphic. Step 1 is you have your sender systems. Step 2, you have your digital core, either ECC or S4HANA as the receiver. And the inbound transactions around these 9 document types will either come in with or without this SAP Passport embedded in the header. Most of SAP products, and I think a lot of even our partner solution extensions technology, so it's then very, very clear the receiver system is able to differentiate between these calls coming in, those with a passport, those without. It's like when you arrive at the airport and you either have a local passport or you don't, you have to go into 2 different queues. The receiver system can differentiate, can keep a log, and it can then provide you with an outcome similar to the screen here. So in this case, you don't need to know the technical user accounts. You don't need to unpack all of your interfaces and processes to identify which ones to count. This is an absolute count using the measurement tool. The downside of this, though, is that you have to allow it to run for a longer period of time. So the estimation, I think, is a bit quicker, but the measurement is more accurate at the cost of more time. Okay, back to this financial incentive. Just to clarify, once you get to a number, let's call that number 100% of your needs, there is a choice that you can make to say either you're going to buy 115%, so 15% of growth and headroom, and you're only going to pay for the 15%, but you're going to benefit from the price tier of 115%, and this is then applicable for your standard volume discounts, It's a standalone order. It can't be mixed and joined up with any other transaction. The second option is you're going to buy at least what you need from the estimate or the measurement tools. There's no limit. And you can combine that with another purchase, and you can immediately benefit from a 90% discount on the document, the digital access document license. Right. Just a second view of what's currently going on is that with this background and our clarification of indirect use and digital access licensing, it's also allowed us to have a clearer message around the license model for S/4HANA. And this is specifically for the on-premise licensing, and everything to do with S/4HANA licensing enterprise management must fit on this map somewhere. So on the left at the top, you still have the user accounts for direct access into the core, as well as developers. Bottom left, we have many add-ons, industry solutions, and line of business engines, and these do not need named user licensing. So long as users are only using these engines, there's no named user licensing required for them. On the bottom right, obviously S/4HANA runs on HANA, but please do make a note when you're back with your teams to just check that your DBAs and your technical guys and the basis teams understand that there are two versions of HANA, and the one is a highly restricted runtime edition. So it allows use rights to run HANA beneath S4 and not really to do much else with it. And so if these guys are cracking open HANA and creating inside of it their own views, their own tables, their own data structures, triggers, you name it, they're actually overusing the license use rights, and a full use edition would then be needed. And in the full use edition, obviously, there's a far richer range of use rights where you can use HANA as a development platform for all of its capabilities. Right, and then on the right at the top, the license model applies, indirect use or via APIs. And just something to note that in this area on S/4HANA, there is no named user license offering in this aspect. So all indirect use or digital access will be licensed or has to be licensed via this document count. So we do understand in a perfect world, or our brand new customers who are starting their journey with S4 and a clean slate, this is quite simple. You run HANA, obviously, you get the enterprise management core, which is sold by users, and all direct users need a license. You then have your engines with the appropriate metric, including the digital access, which the metric is documents. But we're far more aware, most of our customers are in this state, where they're actually in transition between ECC or Classic and S4. And many of you have bought these promotional or flat fee items that basically act as the bridge between the two worlds and allow you to use, in the yellow here, your existing named users and the whole named user license model into the S4 world and the S4 core, and the engines still have the same license requirement, no user named user licenses needed there. So this flat fee promotional item that bridges the two worlds is actually why we say that in this indirect or digital access aspect of the license model, you have a choice still. So you can still stay with the named user license model. And in some cases, the business case makes far more sense if you have a smaller community of users that are perhaps processing a high volume of digital access document types. It makes far more sense to stay with the named user license model. But just to highlight here that there is a choice. And there's no obligation put on anybody by SAP to move into this new digital access license model. Right, I need to go a little bit quicker. I see I'm running out of time, but just briefly looking ahead, the digital access adoption program has been extended, as I said. So you've now, from today, still got 18 months to take us up on the offer to help you do this and to benefit from the pricing models. A hot topic right now is around bots. We are working on this. We're still trying to get absolute clarity. We're going to do this with our licensing language, contractual language. The way we see this is that SAP's intelligent bots are considered application access. You do need to enable this SAP passport technology so that we can clearly differentiate and identify these things, but it's not licensed by named users. But non-SAP bots are considered in the same way, so that would be seen as indirect access for transactions coming in from non-SAP bots. We are working with user groups, trying to get the best possible model to market. One of the approaches that I've seen may be to ask that technical users for these integrations and for these bots have to be registered so that there's a clear way to differentiate them from other indirect use. But as I say, this is still ongoing. Looking ahead, I can offer or invite you to take a look at our help.sap.com portal. We've recently revised the content that was initially put there, so it's getting richer and more extensive and clarifying things in more and more detail. Specifically here, what's in red is this measurability aspect, and also quite a number of interesting use cases like this, for example, where accessing the core via a custom-built ABAP extension is considered human access. Anyone who thinks ABAP's going away should definitely go and have a look at the cloud platform, where we have ABAP even in a RESTful programming model now available to you. This is another exception, that a client app, although it might be non-SAP, is not seen as digital access, but actually seen as human access. And a very interesting one, that so long as this user, Katrin, is using standard SAP functionality to upload or import data from outside of SAP, only a named user license is needed for Katrin and not for the people on the other side of this integration who might be generating this data. Okay, and then I think I can rather just stop here and go to my last slide, where I can very strongly recommend and invite you to please take us up on this digital access evaluation service. As I said, there's a short form to fill in, and there's the process flow. We will basically engage with you. Our experts will set up a number of calls, help you get prepared with this estimation note or estimation program, run it, help you interpret the results, and this is completely non-binding, and you're under no obligation to take any action after the fact. But we really are on a mission to help you clarify, if you're interested in this license model, what kind of quantities you might need. Right, so sorry to take up so much of the time. There is a little bit left. As Genevieve said, if there's any questions, I can certainly try and answer.
So if anyone has any questions, you can just type them into the meeting chat and we will answer them for the next 10 minutes if there are any.
Thanks, Ingrid, for the feedback. Appreciate it. So, David, EDI is exactly the same as the scenario I spoke to earlier. EDI is a concept, and it's basically an integration technology. So it is underlying. So the people on either side of that EDI integration, those in the non-SAP world, there is a licensing requirement on them if they're interacting directly with the digital core inside SAP. Aha, how long does this take? It's definitely influenced by your landscape. The cost is free of charge, so that's an easy one, but it really depends on how many interfaces and integration points you have, how many technical users and scenarios there are to unpack, and how many of these non-digital access document types you're actually creating and generating indirectly. So in some cases, there are some of you on the call, I think, that can attest to it. We started some months ago and we're still busy. So these things can take time. This is why I say to you, there's still 18 months to take us up on this offer. Please do let us know if we can come and help you. It's definitely not an overnight process. How do we start? It's as you can see on this slide at the bottom, there is a request form. It asks you a couple of questions, just whether you are aware of the measurement note, whether it might be applied to your system already, just to get a sense of current state. And you mail that form off to that email address there, and an SAP person will contact you and set it up. Jeanette, yes, the presentation will be shared for sure. Thanks for the nice feedback, everybody. I really appreciate that. Brogan, no, that's definitely not the case. The question, if anyone's not seeing it, is will SAP be adding additional document types? That is definitely not the intention. So it's very much, as I said, restricted into the core, and it's restricted into these core business processes, finance, procure to pay, materials, and so on. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. I hope I haven't missed any, but to those that are dropping off, I can say thanks very much. Genevieve said to me that this is well attended, and we really appreciate the chance to talk to you. Thank you. Neil, solution extensions part of this, yes, but only those that have been enabled with the passport technology. So not all of them at this stage, but for the most part, yes, they will be. If they're not already enabled, they're in process of being enabled. You're welcome, Helen. Nice to see you here. Cheers. Right, then I think we'll close it off there. If there are any other questions, please feel free to reach out. We'll definitely get back to you. And we will share these slides so that there's the links for all of you to access more detail and more of the content.